Hi, my name is John Brewer. I'm the Chief Artificial Intelligence Officer at Haystack ID. It's been about a year since I did one of these videos, so I figured that since the new year was approaching, I should probably do another one. We've come a long way with generative artificial intelligence in the last year or so. When I last talked about this, it was still very much on the drawing board, something that was up and coming, and now we have multiple vendors, both technology and service providers, in the space who are providing these services. Now we actually have production information on how GenAI is going to work. So it's worth taking a look at what we've learned in that time. So it's about a year on from that. The technology ended up developing a little slower, about a quarter slower than I thought it would. The adoption was much faster than I thought it would be. I thought that we would have a very kind of cautious approach to this, but we're seeing a lot of interest. Our analytics team is just going gangbusters, trying to keep up with the demands for new generative AI reviews, rather. Most of which are coming from people who are trying it for the first time, who have kind of been anticipating for the last year that this was going to become available. And now we're actually seeing it out there. It's a mistake to think that GenAI is just a review in the box, but it is a very powerful tool for helping and assisting in a review. In the autumn of 2024, I was given the opportunity to actually give a lecture at Michigan Law to a bunch of law students there. And, it was just kind of an introduction to generative AI, particularly with an eye towards review, and talking about how the technology is used and how they can expect it to be deployed by the time, they pass the bar and they join the legal community as people who are going to be using these tools, as people who are going to be responsible for representing their clients and advising them on how to use these tools. And one of the points that I made while I was giving that talk was that generative AI is very useful because when it reviews a document, at least in the way that it's done today, in most of the solutions, certainly the ones that we're using primarily, it reviews a single document. You might give it information about the case, you might give it information about what it's looking for, you might give it a rubric for how to evaluate whether a document is responsive or relevant or otherwise of interest in the review, but the review of that document only looks at that one document. It doesn't remember anything that it looked at before. And me, coming from a technology point of view, from a pure data and computer science perspective, I see that as a positive. I know that I don't have to worry about what order I feed the documents in. I can split it out across as many workers as I need to, and it will run the same. Or at least within the known criteria and the known variation within generative AI. So I was explaining this concept, and one of the students actually raised her hand and said that if we have a normal review team, we wouldn't expect the reviewers to act like that. We would expect the reviewers, as they're looking through all of these documents, to pick up clues about what's going on, nicknames for individuals, learning more about how forms are filled out, and how they're formatted, especially if they're badly labeled, to help understand what documents are in fact responsive to the rubric and which ones aren't. And her point was essentially that people learning more about that and learn more about the documents that as they review is good because it raises their accuracy downstream. And my natural inclination towards that, my technologist view of that, was that was a problem. That was, we were not consistently rating every single document. It meant that documents that were reviewed later in the review would be more accurate, would be judged differently, because they would be judged in the light of the context created by the documents that were reviewed by that reviewer before. And so I kind of explained this relatively bluntly, and she just kind of looked at me and was like, yeah, your later documents will be more accurate. And I tried to explain this as it's better, and I think I actually used these words, I think I actually said it is better to have a consistent error rate, to know that every document was evaluated inaccurately in the same way, than it is to have some documents evaluated inaccurately and some documents evaluated accurately. And this kind of comes from a history of dealing with data streams where we kind of are detecting biases and then later on we'll account for those biases in our data. And this was just a foreign concept to her. And I realized while I was there that, it it is a little crazy when you put it that way. Essentially what I'm saying is it is better to have consistent error than low error. And the counter argument to that, of course, is that's profoundly stupid, John. Low error is low error. Or higher accuracy is higher accuracy, if you want to look at it that way. I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that as we have worked with generative AI, there are limitations to the technology. There are capabilities that we take for granted in a review today that GenAI just handles differently. And yeah, when we look at, the metrics that we want to be looking at, the accuracy of review, I mean, it's remarkable. It's an incredible technology, but it doesn't work the same way. And it is not a drop-in replacement for humans, especially in places where you learn from the context of what you're looking at. And again, whether that is how forms are laid out, what various blank fields might mean, what nicknames people use, shorthands, things like that. There are a bunch of examples. I think everybody should be at least familiarizing themselves with generative AI review at this point. There's no question. This is going to be a major player in how we handle legal review. It is not review unto itself. The GenAI pass is not a full review. Like there's no more than a beer tap is a bartender. The GenAI is not a full review, but it is an extraordinarily powerful tool for reviewers and review managers. But right now, if you're watching this video in the year that it comes out, you are the first generation who is going to be using this technology. Now is the time to be playing with it. Now is the time to be experimenting with it. Now is the time to be learning what it can and can't do. We are lucky to be in a time where we're early enough in this technology where there are no stupid questions. Just because somebody makes an assertion about what the technology can do, that is just better. In many ways it is, but it is only better when we make certain assumptions about what we're trying to do. It is also not a magic spell that you can just cast on your review to get it done. Now, technology, especially new technology, is famously bad at nuance, and GenAI is no different. There is no question that the applications for generative AI are broad and deep. However, it is important to remember that the nerds who are developing and deploying this technology, myself among them, have a worldview that might be very different than the way that you see review. And you should not necessarily take it for granted that the technologists are right and that they are making assumptions that are compatible with the way you see your job. At the end of the day, you are the business user. You are the person who needs to accomplish a task. And if the technology helps you get there, great. But if the technology does something other than what you're asking it to do, leave it by the side of the road. There's a famous expression in politics. If you get asked a question that you don't want to answer a different question. That is, I think, a good way of looking at GenAI technology, which is the proposal for how the workflow is going to work and for what it's going to do doesn't get you where you want to go, use a different technology, use a different process. I know that I've spent this message sending what might be considered mixed signals about the future of AI. I don't see it that way, but I understand why people are concerned about this technology. And we are excited and invested in helping our customers, new and old, to navigate this new space that review is moving into. And we are looking forward to being able to help everybody with whatever tools that they need in order to be successful in their various legal endeavors. All that said, I hope that you have a happy and prosperous 2025, and look forward to seeing many of you in the new year.